I'm supposed to use the female restroom, but I'm not necessarily going to pass. And so I'm going to be in the restroom that I'm supposed to be in, and someone is going to call the cops on me. They're making a list, they're checking it twice, they're going to find out who's a tranny or not. I posted a video a little while ago where I was very much fully crying. You know, I live in Kansas, and not only do we have a law that recently passed that is one of the worst, if not the worst, anti-trans bathroom bills in the country, very limiting, and it applies to basically all bathrooms. You're supposed to be in the one that you were assigned at birth or whatever, and of course that increases danger, it increases scrutiny. I am supposed to use the female restroom, but I sound like this, and like even cisgender women, so even people who are not trans, are being questioned and harassed and sometimes assaulted even in women's restrooms because they don't look like they belong. So yeah, when people say, oh, you know, well, you can at least kind of pretend to be female if you want. Like, not really, dude. You know, when even cisgender women are getting caught up in this, not really. So I live in Kansas, and that law, which is the very restrictive bathroom bill, it kind of has this like thing toward the end where it says, for the purposes of public health information collection, individuals will be identified by their assigned sex at birth. And the way that people have interpreted this, and the way that it seems was perhaps even the intention for it to be interpreted this way, the Attorney General has said now that they are, not only are they trying to prevent you from changing your driver's license and your birth certificate, because that's information for the purposes of public identification, or however they put it exactly in the law. The idea behind that is you might be able to stop people from changing their driver's license or their birth certificate, like their sex assigned whatever bullshit. If you're starting to pass as female, maybe you want to get that M off of your license so that a person who sees it doesn't go, oh, I guess this is a trans woman, and then proceeds to like deny you a job or deny you a place to live. A cop could assault you because of the fact that you're a transgender, or like they're gonna now use slurs and misgender you when they're speaking to you. That's why it's so bad. Before I get too far into this, not only is it just terrible in general to have your identity documents not like unable to be updated, it feels terrible, right? But they actually put us in danger. Like having those identity documents not match, if you can't get a job, if you can't get housing, unemployment and being unhoused, like unemployment means you can't afford to eat, which means you could die. Not having a place to live means you can be sleeping on the sidewalk, which you can die from. They really are hitting hard on that. We thought, oh, maybe that's just like a really loose interpretation of the law. Like, ooh, maybe this won't actually impact people in this way. But no, hit like on the video if you're ready to get super, super mad. Because the Attorney General is suing to stop trans people from changing their birth certificates. And at a news conference Monday, Kobach announced his office's formal legal guidance on enforcing parts of the new law. So this is saying, here, like the law explicitly says so and so, and we are going to now tell you how to interpret and enforce that. He said the state's permanent records of birth certificates and driver's licenses would reflect a person's gender at birth, regardless of whether that person had filed to change their gender on their birth certificate at any point before the new law goes into effect. So retroactively, they're going to change people's stuff in their computer systems. And then he says, if you were a person who transitioned and got a birth certificate reflecting a different sex, that piece of paper can remain with you. There's nothing in the law that forces someone to surrender a certificate that was changed. However, the state's data will reflect the original sex at birth. So that means if your birth certificate was destroyed and you needed to get a new one, then the one that the state issues you will have your original sex at birth on it. And I don't know how this is going to affect driver's licenses going forward. My driver's license, I changed my legal sex on it in 2016. So when it expires in a couple years, am I going to receive an ID that still says male? Or am I going to receive an ID that says female? And like this also notwithstanding the fact that it's total bullshit that in Kansas you can't change your license to say X on it. That would be convenient. Advocates for and against the law have said that it lacks a clear enforcement mechanism. That's true. The law doesn't change any criminal statuses, doesn't mandate any criminal penalties or fines, and doesn't allow people to sue another party over alleged violations. So when it makes it illegal for you to use such and such bathroom, it didn't actually include in the law, it is a crime under this rule, and it is going to be punished this way. A person who uses the wrong bathroom will be prosecuted under trespassing laws. Like, that's what they did in Florida, but this doesn't have anything in particular in there. So This has led critics to predict that the law's most likely direct outcome will be on how the state maintains identification documents for transgender Kansans. Okay, so the ACLU is finally getting involved a little bit. Thank you, ACLU. Holy God, I've been checking their website for any reference to Kansas for weeks. No matter how much Attorney General Kobach and extremists in our state legislature may wish to, they cannot erase the fundamental protections the Constitution guarantees to every single LGBTQ plus Kansan, says the ACLU of Kansas Executive Director Micah Kubik. Quote, Mr. Kobach should rethink the wisdom and the sheer indecency of this attempt to weaponize his office's authority to attack transgender Kansans just trying to live their lives. The filing pertains to a 4-year-old consent decree that required Kansans to allow people with birth certificates issued in the state to change those documents. Yeah. The decree itself was the result of a 2018 lawsuit in which a group of transgender people sued Kansas, arguing that policies in place at the time preventing them from changing the birth certificates were unconstitutional. So it literally only became an option like 5 years ago to change your birth certificate, like your gender marker on your birth certificate in Kansas. We've only had the right to do that for 5 years. And now they're going like, well, you can keep that flimsy piece of paper that we've already given you, but it doesn't actually have any bearing on what we have on our documentation. And like, yeah, there is still the question of, well, if I need a new one, are you going to issue me a document that does not reflect my identity and my appearance? Like that may not even accurately reflect like my sex at this point. This is a really disturbing trend of red state attorney generals making these unilateral fascistic decisions. First, Ken Paxton did it in Texas. He is currently impeached and being prosecuted for unrelated corruption. And how they declared CPS needed to treat any supportive parents as abusive. Then the Missouri Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, putting the arbitrary and impossible restrictions on trans healthcare that basically banned it for adults as well as kids. None of these cases have gone through any kind of democratic process. Yeah, thank you. Yes, exactly, Mama. That is exactly why this is so effed up. Like, when I posted my video that was all crying and upset about this, someone in the comments was like, this is why voting is so important. Nobody voted for this fuckhole. Like, nobody voted for this fucking dickweed. Like, do you see this guy? Hold on, excuse me. Do you see this guy? Nobody voted for him. Nobody voted for this guy. Attorneys general are appointed. They're appointed. And then what? They have this, like, unilateral executive power? Like, this is fucking insane, frankly, and it's, like, seriously starting to piss me off. This is Republicans being fascists. This is why it's so dangerous. And like, this is the thing that is so scary about the fact that nobody is covering this. Not only are there laws, like 550 laws at this point having been introduced across this country attacking the rights of trans people, and that's not making the news, but it's like not even just the laws. It's these extra legislative processes, these executive powers. Ron DeSantis appointing a bunch of people to the Board of Medicine. Like, dude, he has been appointing people to that Board of Medicine for a while. Like, this was premeditated. That they knew that they were not going to pass the law through the legislation. They knew that they were not going to get that progress done, which they did eventually, of course. But before they got the legislation to pass, they used the Board of Medicine, which was corrupt, and very clearly, like, most of the people on it had been appointed to the board after having given him a donation. The fact that they are using trans people as their excuse to exercise a bunch of executive discretion and undermine the legislative process. So you are not being represented in so many different ways. Your districts and your cities have been gerrymandered to the point that your vote does not matter. You are in places where like they don't even give a shit to go through the process of even pretending to go through the democratic process of writing a law and passing it back and forth between the Senate and the House. It's like theater, you know? They're like, we're bypassing all the theater of democracy and we're just heading straight to the fascism and the authoritarianism. It feels like all of the attacks on trans people by the various state governments right now are completely inorganic. I don't think if you polled regular ass people, they'd give a shit at all. It's all talking heads bringing up the issue to the people and making them scared of big trans people. I mean, it is literally manufactured. If any of you follow Zinnia Jones over on Twitter, or like if you follow her website, genderanalysis.net, I mean, Zinnia posts all the time about the fact that these people are actually, they've thought of this. They're thinking about it really hard and they're planning this whole thing. They have a script. They're copy-pasting the same laws over and over across the country. Like, they're passing shitty laws that don't even have any legitimate, like, structure to them. laws with typos, laws with half of a sentence missing. It has been polled, not even the majority of average Republicans have this hate boner. But the question, as always, is, do they even need the majority? Because the answer is obviously no. We are being ruled by a Christo-fascist authoritarian minority. They're using Christianity, they're using the concept of the family, they're using the concept of children as a weapon to like bludgeon trans people down, but it does, like, they don't even care. They don't even care about trans people. They're just ruining our lives because it is the convenient way to get them to the fascism, which is what their actual goal is. So I guess there is like a small glimmer of hope that similar rules in Idaho and Ohio were struck down by federal courts in 2020. However, a federal judge in Oklahoma dismissed a challenge earlier this year to a similar law barring changes to birth certificates. Governor Kelly took office in 2019. She agreed to a consent decree, a settlement overseen by the federal government, under which the state was required to, quote, provide certified copies of birth certificates to trans individuals that accurately reflect their gender, and without the inclusion of information that would directly or indirectly disclose an individual's transgender status on the face of the birth certificate. So yeah, they're like, I remember in some state they were trying to pass a law to make it so that you had a gender marker on your birth certificate, which you could change and update if you wish, but then it would have a sex, which was your sex assigned at birth, which would not be changeable, which is like 1,000,000%. That's a pink triangle. That's a fascism. Like that's a they're trying to mark you. It's a clear violation of ex post facto to retroactively change people's IDs now. Yeah, like it's kind of like how when gay marriage was briefly legalized in California before then they passed Proposition 8, which canceled it, right? They couldn't nullify the marriages that happened while they were legal, right? Just because, like, so gay marriage was illegal, and then it was briefly legal, and then they made it illegal again. But during this window, people got married, and their marriages remained valid. They didn't cancel them. They didn't say, no, we're not doing, like, they didn't do that. So this is like a similar kind of thing. Kobach in his filing said that the state needed to be able to prevent people from changing their birth certificates to help with enforcement of the new law, and that it was, quote, impossible to comply with both SB 180 and the consent decree. Yeah, I mean, this is really fucking infuriating, really, really, really angering. It's like I don't even know how to feel about it. I'm like angry and I'm sad, like I'm disappointed. I feel like it's really messed up that I have to have a conversation with my husband about moving away from the place where we were both born and planned to build a life. I don't even know if it would matter to any of these people if I were to call up Chris Kobach's office and it's like, hey, I was born here. I've paid a shit ton of taxes here. I was gonna buy a house here, but instead, I'm gonna go give all my property taxes to some other fucker who isn't trying to like gut my civil rights at every opportunity. And not to mention that having a handy dandy list of trans Kansans on the AG's desk is probably worse than reverting gender markers. Yeah, like, because the fact is that they're gonna go through and find the records of everybody who ever changed their gender marker, and they're gonna compile a little list. They're making a list, they're checking it twice, they're gonna find out who's a tranny or not. Oh yeah, this is worth looking at. So according to an ACLU report from the US Trans Survey, 68% of trans people reported that none of their IDs listed the correct name and gender. As a result of showing an ID that listed the wrong name or gender, many trans people experienced negative outcomes, including 25% reported verbal harassment for having an ID that didn't match, 16% had a denial of services or benefits, 9% were asked to leave a location or establishment, and 2% were actually assaulted or attacked as a result of their identification not matching their appearance. If you are affected by these laws, contact your local LGBTQ+ organization or legal organization. These organizations will be looking for plaintiffs. So I wonder if that's part of the issue with the fact that they haven't yet challenged this bathroom law. Or like, are they even gonna challenge the bathroom part of the law? Or are they gonna just challenge the IDs part of the law? They need a plaintiff, I guess. Yeah, the scariest part is that even if this gets stopped, as long as this thing is in motion, they will be getting that list. It won't go away if the courts rule against Kobach. You know, like, I mean, I would love if we could say, hey, this is temporary. I would love if we could say, yeah, don't worry about it. This law isn't gonna pass. Like, the ACLU is gonna stop it and we're gonna be okay. But it doesn't put an end to the anti-trans sentiment. It doesn't put an end to the fact that I now know that the place where I want to, the place like where I've tried to build my life at wants to like eradicate me effectively. Like, they want me to be gone. And it's like, I just don't know how to wrap my head around it some days. It's so toxic and it's so harmful. And it's like, I don't even know what it would take at this point for me to feel like things are maybe gonna be okay. Like, I don't know what I would need in order to feel like it is safe to stay here. Because right now, I just don't feel that it's safe to stay here. If it wasn't for my partner and dog, I'd hop the nearest freight train for the Pacific Coast. It's a fireworks show feeding on hate. It will burn itself out. No, it won't. Yeah, they don't stop until they win or they die. It's Game of Thrones rules with Nazis. You win or you die. Yeah, and also racism is definitely totally all burnt out today. There's no racism in Ba Sing Se. Moral panics can tend to fizzle out, but trans folks have been repeatedly targeted in multiple moral panics for decades now, which can lead to genocide. Yeah, exactly, Jamie, truly. Harrison Ford said it's okay. Indiana Jones would push other people out of the way to be the first one in line to punch the Nazis. You know what I mean? These people want us to die. These people want us to die. They keep saying it in so many words. They keep saying, we want to eliminate trans people and we want to eliminate transgenderism, and like, people don't have the right to cross-dress in public, and like, you don't have like First Amendment protections, and you don't have the right to use the bathroom without being harassed. Because again, it's not even really about the bathroom that you were supposed to use or whatever. It's about like opening you up to harassment. Because again, I'm supposed to use the female restroom, but I am not necessarily gonna pass. And so I'm gonna be in the restroom that I'm supposed to be in, and someone is going to call the cops on me. Hello, it's July. Thank you to my patrons, especially Tiago Nascimento, Mersh Rolvag, Amanda B., Michelle Frattaroli, Danielle McDonald, Sarah A., Spooky Heather Sylvia, Athiette, Robin Olson, Michelle Winter, Wellington Marcus, Jamie Jam, Past Null Infinity, Desi Quiche, Nova, Suzanne Maynard, Mr. Atheist, Elizabeth Bartell, Sojo, and Kevin Young.